Morning, this is the House Appropriations Committee. It is February 11th, 2025, just about 10:15. And we have with us the Department of Libraries, who are going to talk a little bit about their FY26 budget. I really am trying to be sure that those areas of state government who could be impacted by things happening in Washington get a chance to come in and talk to us, get a sense of what you're possibly dealing with. So if your budget is pretty standard, and I haven't looked at your materials yet, tell us a little bit about what you do but really want to hear about how you're thinking about all of this stuff.
Absolutely. Good morning, and thank you, Chair Shai, and thank you.
You met us before
I have met you twice.
this year?
No, not.
Okay, well, then we will introduce ourselves because we have 6 new members on the committee. And so we'll start with Dave.
Good morning. I'm Dave Iacoboni from Morrisville, and I represent the Lamoille, Washington district. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning and welcome. John Kosenska from Burke, and I represent the Essex Caledonia district.
Hi, Mike Macro. I represent Bennington and Powell.
Tom Stevens from Waterbury, representing the Washington Chittenden district.
Jim?
Yes, hi, good morning. Jim Harrison from the town of Chittenden, also represent Mendon, Killington, and Pittsfield.
And Robin Shai from Middlebury.
Pip Lindley from Burlington.
Trevor Squirrel, Underhill, Jericho.
Wayne Rush, I represent Highgate, Franklin, Berkshire, and Richford.
Good morning, Mike Murphy from the Wyndham 4 district, that's Putney and Dummerston.
Lynn Dickinson, I represent St. Albans Town.
Well, it's very nice to meet you all. My name is Catherine Delnau. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Libraries and the State Librarian. And I'm joined today by 2 Assistant State Librarians, Tom McMurdo and Jeanette Schaefer, and by 2 colleagues from AOA Finance. We have Holly Ferrand and Carly Oliver here.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do is to share an overview of the department's work, especially as you have so many new members. I think that will be helpful. And then to answer questions about the budget. So our department, the Department of Libraries, is within the Agency of Administration. We serve the 3 branches of state government, libraries statewide, and all Vermonters. The statewide services that we provide include access to the Vermont Online Library. Through that online library, Vermonters can access reliable, vetted information, including full-text magazines, books, medical information, small business resources, and even auto repair manuals. So it really has quite a variety of things for our vast variety of Vermonters. Our shared online resources also include a platform for learning called Udemy, and it has more than 20,000 instructional videos. You could learn how to play the ukulele, or you could learn how to make a pivot table. It's got a wide variety of things, classes that are video classes that support lifelong learning, but also support workforce development. We also provide Vermonters with access to Peterson's career and test prep learning platform. The tests include things like the PSAT, the SAT, but also the MCAT or the LSAT. So also CDL licenses. We have a wide variety of resources in those. And importantly, to the chair's question, that set of resources, which is accessed by Vermonters at their academic, school, and public libraries throughout the state with their local library card, that is provided largely with funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is a federal funding source. There is a grants to states program that IMLS administers, and we receive an annual allotment, and we can look at the numbers for that in our budget book. But that is one of the programs that was on the list of frozen allocations. So I do want to call that out for you. So every time I mention IMLS funding in this presentation, you'll see what could be impacted and where there could be an affordability issue for Vermonters. Because if we don't provide those services, then the costs of those services would be pushed to local, municipal, and incorporated public libraries throughout the state, each of which operate independently, and they would each be negotiating their own contracts. So moving on, another key service that we administer is the interlibrary loan system. This is another program that could be impacted if the freeze were to resume. on federal funds. This system is really important for Vermonters. Last year, nearly 67,000 items moved around the state and between our state and other states. Across the country, most state libraries are funding interlibrary loan with those, at least in part, with those federal funds. So our access to materials outside of the state could be impacted if those federal funds were cut. We in the department have a courier system that we administer. Through that system, weekly stops, at least weekly, are made to 141 libraries throughout the state. And we support those public libraries that participate in the courier system with a grant to offset half of the costs to the local library for participating in that network. So we administer the statewide contract, and then we use the IMLS federal funding to make grants. This year, it's in the realm of about $680 per library that's participating. Without the federal funding, we simply don't have the resources to make the grants. So that's another key service that would be impacted. Vermont is actually a net borrower. We are up there at the top of the net borrower list, along with North Dakota and Washington, D.C., I believe. And that's not something to be proud of as a state. It speaks to the lack of collections locally to meet state needs.
So this is a net borrower of books and materials that we can't find in our libraries.
That we don't have access to in Vermont libraries. We're going outside to get the physical copies of books. So that's something to think about when people talk about making physical collections of libraries smaller. There's actually a cost to that for Vermonters, which is passed on through the interlibrary loan program. When an academic institution, for example, cuts its collection and makes it inaccessible through interlibrary loan. On a more positive note, we also have the Palace Project app. So we know how important digital collections are to people, ebooks and e-audiobooks. And we provide a core collection of resources. We focus on buying kind of classic titles with a perpetual license because those will be available to Vermonters. So we think that's a good fiscal use of our federal and state funds. The collections that we buy and the Palace Project app, those are things that we fund jointly with a mixture of federal and state funds. If you look at our budget, at the level you're looking at it, you probably won't see this exactly, but if you looked at our budget tracking and encumbrance sheets in the department, you'll see that almost everything we do is funded in part by the federal funds and in part by the state funds. We basically split everything, including costs for 16 full-time staff members of the department. Another service that we provide and are really happy to provide for folks, this is a direct service to Vermonters. Our ABLE library is a network library of the National Library Service. And through the ABLE library, we provide reading materials in a variety of formats, including Braille, an extensive ebook collection and e-audiobook collection. And it's specifically geared toward Vermonters who are eligible for the service of the National Library Service, the federal program. And those Vermonters are people who are blind or have print disabilities. That could range from having a visual difference, having a learning difference, or even you could qualify if you have trouble holding a print book or accessing a book physically. We've been a part of that program since the 1970s, mid-1970s. And that program, we have not heard anything about that program being cut, but that's one that we're watching because the collections that we make accessible to Vermonters through that are largely the collections of the federal program, which is housed within the Library of Congress. Something that we do in Vermont through our department is to provide books to incarcerated individuals at all 6 of the state's correctional facilities. And we also provide reading materials for patients of the state psychiatric facilities and the veterans. Oh, wait, just a second. Yeah.
Quiet the crowd down a little bit.
It's all right. You can continue.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yes.
Something that's really important that the department does is that we provide consultation services to Vermont's public libraries. In 2023, the department published a working group study on libraries in Vermont. And we heard really loud and clear from the library community through the process of doing the study that supported that report, that the services that we provide with the consultants in the Department of Libraries are essential. Statute now says that we shall provide them, so we must provide these consultation services as a result of Act 150, which was made into law last session. Our consultants support public library staff, directors of public libraries, and importantly, trustees. Every library in the state has 5 trustees minimum. And there are 187 public libraries. So imagine that cohort that we're supporting to govern their local municipal or incorporated public library, the staff that we're supporting. Many folks in Vermont who are working in public libraries don't have a master's degree in library service, but our consultants do have that skill set. And so what we're doing is we're really training them and helping to support them in providing high-level, high-quality library service, understanding the principles of librarianship, how to do things like select materials, serve youth, have engaged programs for the community, manage their buildings, things of that nature. We convene topical roundtables, and we have regular regional meetings of library staff and also large libraries, small libraries, so regional groupings, and then also by size. And we have a continuing education program called the Certificate of Public Librarianship that supports library directors in learning the skills they need to do their jobs every day. And again, this is a key service that we provide because roughly 85% of library workers in our state come to their roles without formal training in our profession. One of the things that you'll see in the budget is a $90,000 allocation for the Community Legal Information Center at the Vermont Law School. And we manage that annual grant so that Vermonters have access to legal information and a full-time law librarian. We do a lot in the space of literacy, including supporting and administering a statewide summer reading program to keep kids reading over the summer and make sure there's not a backward slide when they're not in school. And we have typically been awarding grants to every public library in the state for summer reading. We also right now are doing some additive work. And these 2 programs that I'm about to talk about are areas where if that list of programs were impacted at the federal level, these 2 programs could be impacted. So I want to just call that out. The first of them is the U.S. Department of Treasury's capital project funds. We awarded 14 public libraries in Vermont with support so that they could improve their buildings to better provide access to high-speed internet for the purposes of work, health, and education. We have already requested that checks be cut for a little bit over $2 million, but we still have about $13.5 million to spend if you take out the administrative costs. So the 2 of the library projects are completed at this time, but 12 of them are still in progress, and we have not yet reimbursed them for their costs. So that could be a cost to Vermont's public library communities. And then we also received a $10 million appropriation through the congressionally directed spending program that it's being administered by the Housing and Urban Development Department federally. And we're still in the process of finalizing that and getting the state approvals to oversee that fund. But we have been granted the money. We do have an award letter. And that's something that we're queuing up to begin doing the application process this summer. So those are 2 areas where there could be direct impacts. Those 2 programs, again, were on the list of the frozen programs. To our knowledge, the frozen programs are currently unfrozen, and we are proceeding as normal with them. But, we're watching and seeing.
Yes. But I thought I heard you earlier talk about IMLS as also being threatened.
Yes.
Because it is a part of many of the programs that you run, if not all of them. So really all 3 of these bullets are at risk
Yes.
But these two particular programs, I mean, what's being done will not happen unless federal money is there.
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
And if the IMLS funding were cut, the department would need to dramatically reconfigure what it's doing and how it's doing it. I do not believe that we can there's not any way that we could provide exactly the same services with a third of our federal IMLS. A third of our budget is IMLS funding, so we would have to make some decisions.
Kaczynski?
So that would include projects that are in progress. Do you have checks yet?
So with regards to the capital projects, that could include projects that are in progress for the Treasury program that haven't yet submitted for reimbursement. We have sent out, or we're in the process of sending out checks to 2 projects that are fully complete, but the other 12 Treasury projects would potentially be impacted. The HUD projects, we have not chosen the subrecipient libraries yet. So we haven't committed any funding to those subrecipient libraries for the $10 million HUD program, which you don't see in the packet because we're going through the process of requesting that through JFO.
Thank you.
Well, I think I've shared pretty much everything. So I think the next step could be that we would turn to page 15 and you'll see a high level, and that's in, I think you're all holding on to it, this budget.
Yes.
So if you turn to page 15, you'll see a high level overview of the department's budget. And as I've been sharing, our general funds from the state, with your support, would make up 61% of that budget. And the federal funds from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or IMLS, make up 33%. One thing to also note is that the IMLS funding is typically announced in a delayed manner, and that the numbers that are in the budget book are not for 26 are not necessarily the actual budget numbers, because they have not told us that specific amount yet. It's too early in the cycle for them to tell us our fiscal 26 budget, so it's an estimate. The other thing to just be aware of is this year they haven't really, even though they're allowing us to draw down, they haven't really even told us our fiscal 25 number finally yet. So we are in constant communication with our team in finance. We've just done a drawdown at the end of January. We want to minimize any impacts if that funding is not available to us. It's difficult to even think about that. And I'm sure you can imagine what our team is going through with this uncertainty. It's a difficult time planning wise. So just know that those numbers, that the number in there for fiscal 26 is not the actual number, and that the grants to state allocation in 2024 was $1,244,357. So that's what we received in the last year that we had an actual award amount given to us.
Yes, Lynn.
Yes, when you talk about they haven't announced this, is this because they're working on a fiscal year, so it starts in October, like coming up? And that's why how is that?
No, the fiscal year that I'm looking at my colleague Jeanette, who administers that fund, and she'll tell me if I get this wrong, but the fiscal year that they haven't told us for sure began already. We're spending projected amounts based on kind of the same level of funding that we had in 2024. But they haven't made an exact announcement, an exact award, because of the federal budget process and the fact that there have been some delays in solidifying that amount of funding for IMLS for this current year that we're spending in.
So we're in fiscal year 25.
Yes.
Yeah, which we started last July.
Right.
My understanding, the federal budget starts in October. Although
Yes.
they haven't got a budget yet either, because they're doing a continuing resolution.
Exactly. And the continuing resolution, thank you for providing me with that phrase, which I couldn't remember. The continuing resolution, until it's finalized, IMLS can't give us our exact 2025 grants to states allotment notice.
Okay.
So they have given us spending authority, they're reimbursing us. But we don't have the normal award letter that we would have had usually much closer to October.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that question. What we try to do, just for some context, is we try to spend, even though we're aware that the federal fiscal year starts on October 1st and runs through September 30th, what we've done to sort of simplify our budget is we have a 2-year spending, each grants to states allocation has a 2-year period of performance. What we do is we spend one allocation in one state fiscal year to try to simplify our budget planning a little bit. So it's probably clear as mud. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But we do try to spend one allocation in one state fiscal year. That's what we aim for, because that makes our budgeting a lot easier to understand. And that's something that we've begun doing since I took the reins at the department in February 22. We've made a lot of changes. And actually, if I can draw your attention to page 15, a lot of the things that you're seeing as ups and downs are really just ups and downs because of improved coding of invoices. There aren't significant changes in our programs or services. We're really just sort of labeling things in a more consistent way when we're paying invoices than people in the past may have done. And also we went through everything in our budget and really thought about the invoice codes and how should we be labeling those so that they make more sense. So you will notice some areas of increase, but with the exception of the salaries and benefits, the largest increases are probably in the third-party info services. You'll see some changes there, but again, none of our programs and services have changed considerably. If you looked at our budget book from last year, our executive summary reads almost exactly the same. So it's just really adjusting to the costs, which continue to go up of the services we provide. The databases go up in price. There's some fluctuation in all of our contracts over time. But our team has done a really good job, and I want to credit particularly Assistant State Librarian Tom Murdo, who's done a really good job of identifying lower cost alternatives like Udemy and switching over to that rather than a higher cost program or product that we used in the past. So we actually reduced the overall costs, even though you're seeing a slight increase in how much we're asking in the general fund. That's really to offset the fact that the LSTA funds don't necessarily increase at 3% a year. They sometimes go down even. Thank you so much. I really appreciated meeting you all today, and I'm happy to answer any future questions you have.
Rep Dickinson has the library, so we'll follow questions through there, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that you don't have to go into plan B or C.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that you're asking these questions today, because it's nice to be able to share what the impacts would be so that you can plan.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're thinking about it every day, all day, so the uncertainty is a challenge, to be sure. So great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much. Take care. Okay, committee, let's see where we are. Okay, so we will go off live in a minute, and the agency administration is talking with us at 11. Tiff has to go speak, or she's meeting with somebody, I guess, and then I have to go to our caucus. So when we get back at 11, Jim's going to try to run it from there. And if you all don't think he's doing it, then Trevor, if you don't mind, are you going to be around before lunch?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll give Jim a shot, and then you can vote him off the island and have do it instead.
I think the guy that was in that chair before was doing a great job.
Really, Jim, or is it?
We'll get Charlie back.
I'm scheduled.
All right, be easy on me.
Okay, that's fine. So people are going to be coming and going. As long as we have somebody here to run the meeting, that would be a good thing. At 1 o'clock, I have to present the budget adjustment to Senate Appropriations for half an hour. So Tiff, you'll be here at 1?
Yeah.
In the room. Okay, so Tiff will run the meeting until I get back, and then I have to present a bill at 2 for 15 minutes in GovOps. So there's just a lot of that happening, but somebody will run the meeting while we'll just continue. So we're good until 11, and let's go up.